Show with Facebook Live, and today we are talking, yes, about electric vehicles, but more about how it fits into your lifestyle, anxiety range, because I think those are the two key things for people who have never had an EV and are kind of thinking about getting one. So let me introduce our panel to you. First off, we have Jill Simonillo, Managing Editor, Pickup Truck and SUV Talk. Then we have Christina Botero, ComEd Senior Manager of Beneficial Electrification. And then Mike Hanley, Cars.com Senior Road Test Editor. Welcome everybody to Facebook Live at the Auto Show. Okay, so Jill, we were just talking about if you're the best lifestyle for an EV. You know, you really have to think about this, because if you do a lot of long distance driving, it's definitely going to add time to your trip.
You know, it really is. I don't own an EV, but I test a lot of EVs, and I drive back and forth to Indianapolis every other weekend, and I will very often have an EV. And you just know, like, that 3-hour drive is going to turn into a 4-hour drive, and if everybody else needs to charge, it could be a 6-hour drive. So you have to. Our current society is hurry, 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 hurry. Gotta get there as fast as you can, and that is not the EV lifestyle. You know, the EV lifestyle is planning extra time to charge. And, you know, coming back from my parents' house one time, I had to stop and charge because there was no way I was gonna make it home. And I had to wait 2 hours just to get up to a charger. And, you know, I was at a station that had 4 chargers, but 2 of them were broken. And so everybody was waiting for those 2 chargers. But more recently, I had a much more pleasant experience. I drove from Denver all the way to Seattle using the Volvo Starbucks charging network. And I've always been of the opinion that if you were going to have a charging station, it should be at a Starbucks or a Panera or someplace where you want to go spend time.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, the one on the way to Indianapolis is in the back of a Walmart parking lot. I do not need to spend 4 hours in a Walmart. But you know, with the new Starbucks infrastructure that they've built, and they did that specifically because between Denver and Seattle, it's a bit of a dead zone. You drive for 2 hours, you stop, you get a coffee, you top off your charger, go to the bathroom, clean bathroom, safe space, well lit, good area to be, and then you move on to the next one, and then you know, keep charging along the way. And that was a very, I mean, it definitely took a lot longer, don't get me wrong, but it was a much more pleasant experience, and I love to see the new innovative ideas that people are coming up with the charging infrastructures. But you just, if you're going to own an EV, you gotta add time.
It seems to me like this would be better off with maybe a plug-in hybrid, because you could switch to gas, use the battery when you could, and then you wouldn't have to stop and charge. As you want to add something to that?
Oh yeah, I think we're seeing that interest grow in both hybrids and plug-in hybrids as people take a step back and think, maybe I'm not ready for a full EV, but I like the idea of going around Chicago and using only electric power, plugging in at home, and then for longer trips I still have the ability to use a gas engine and quickly refuel. And we've seen interest more on Cars.com also of hybrids, just general hybrids like the Prius. Like, people are also looking at that as an alternative. Like, I just want to save money at the pump too.
So, Christina, can you talk a little bit about the infrastructure? What's being done to address some of these issues?
I'm so glad you asked that.
You're just waiting for me to ask that.
One of the things that we're hearing is that I think we can all agree that there's a need to really expand the public charging infrastructure for electric vehicles. And right now, there are incentives at the federal and state level for that. But I'm excited to announce actually that ComEd just rolled out this month new rebates, both for residential as well as for business and public sector customers. And part of what we're trying to do is to make sure that we reduce the upfront costs and support the expansion of those chargers. And what's exciting in Illinois specifically is that, you know, we offer a reliability that is really top in the country, so that customers, you know, as we expand this network, have more access to charging while having a reliable power grid, and in a state where most of the energy that we are supplying is really clean energy. So you can get really the best of both worlds. But the incentives are going to be crucial as we expand the network to make sure that the range anxiety that customers have today is really not a barrier to adoption.
You know, I want to talk a little bit about some of the EVs that are out there. Like, Tesla has been out there for a while. And now we're seeing, we just had this cold snap, and do we blame that on the fact that customers were not properly educated about how to take care of an electric vehicle when it's very cold? Because we know batteries, they lose their charge in cold weather. We know that. I don't know that the average person knows that. I mean, think of your cell phone. If it gets too cold, too hot, it's not going to work right. So was it that, or was it the actual vehicle and the battery? You know, and how do we work around that and make sure it doesn't happen again? Anybody want to take that?
I think there's some steps EV drivers of any type of EV can take to better manage public charging. Preconditioning the battery when you're going to a charging station can get it ready to help speed up the charging time.
What does preconditioning a battery mean? Because
So
not everybody knows.
Preconditioning the battery is ensuring that it's at the proper temperature, and that can be managed through the vehicle itself. A lot of times when you enter a charging station as a destination, then the vehicle will automatically do that through the navigation system, and it gets the battery at the optimal temperature so that when you charge it can make the most of that power. The other thing is also stopping at 80%, because when you go above 80% charge, the charge rate dips very fast. So like that remaining 20% you may be trying to get is going to take a long time to get there. And then if you have other people waiting to charge too, because they're experiencing reduced range because of the cold, you're spending a lot of time at that charger that's not offering a lot of value at that point.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and I mean, I would also add that I think that there is certainly a huge learning curve that we as a society have to go through right now. And I mean, I'm still learning, and as I'm learning, I'm trying to share my experience with everybody else because, you know, the first time I drove an EV, I didn't realize about the preconditioning, and I was driving down, and it took like an hour to get to 80% when it should have only taken me 15 minutes. And so preconditioning is incredibly important, but in terms of range loss, I think that we're still trying to figure that out because nobody was talking about it. And this is the first time we've had like a really, really cold winter in a while in Chicago. I mean, I think when I had actually the Cadillac Lyriq and it was negative 14 degrees. And you want to talk about range loss, I definitely experienced it. I should have had 307 miles of range, and I don't think I ever got up over, like at 100%, over like about 200. So, but the good news is the car knows it's cold outside, and the car will learn your driving habits. And so knowing the temperature, learning your driving habits allows the car to accurately tell you what your range is going to be. So even though it's not 307, which is what it should have been, I knew accurately what my range was going to be. So I drove the Cadillac Lyriq down to Indianapolis, and I put in my parents' address, and the vehicle said, "You will arrive with negative 4% battery. Would you like to stop and charge?" And I'm like, yes. Yes, I would like to stop and charge. So I think that it's really important for people to research the vehicle, understand electric vehicles, and understand what range means. Just because the vehicle says you're going to get 307 miles, you're not. Gasoline vehicles don't even. They're not even accurate. But people aren't as paranoid about that because there's a gas station on every corner.
You can fill up anywhere.
You can fill up anywhere. And so I just think there's education on our part, on the population's part, that we need to understand. You know, in addition to being a lifestyle change, there's just like a huge learning curve in understanding your vehicle, because it's not, people, I think, it looks like a gas vehicle. It doesn't look funny anymore unless you're looking at the Cybertruck, which,
well, that's
TBD,
a whole other animal.
Whole other animal.
Yeah.
But it doesn't look funny. It looks like a normal car, so you think it's like a normal car, but it's not.
So how much education do people need? I mean, the auto show every year, they have lots of information, and with the EV track, there's 9 different manufacturers there, so you can ask a lot of questions. But does the general public realize how much education they need?
I think the general public does acknowledge that there's an educational need that's required, and I think there are a lot of resources out there. So at Comet alone, we, as part of our beneficial electrification program, we have an education and awareness program that's meant to expand awareness at all levels across our customer base. And we offer a lot of tools as well. So like an EV toolkit is one that our customers love that can help them understand, if I go electric, what is that going to mean for me? How much am I going to save in fuel costs and maintenance costs, right? what is the life cycle savings for the vehicle, right? And I think that we do have to continue educating our customers, but also our network of, for example, dealers, to make sure that they're communicating the benefits of electric vehicles very well to our customers, which goes beyond fuel savings, maintenance savings, into health benefits, environmental benefits, and so on, and to look at it holistically rather than just focusing on the charging itself.
I think one thing about the education side is that a lot of people are used to researching the car when they're buying a car. With EVs, you have to really research like your home charging setup and what it's going to be like. And that may mean changes to your home, both from a electrical supply standpoint and how much that's going to cost, because we really encourage people who are buying an EV to have a dedicated home charging setup, because it's the most affordable way to operate an EV. You can get around some of the issues with public charging, at least when you're driving locally, because you have a home source for refueling. But that can be different depending on what type of home you live in, whether it's a standalone, townhome, or apartment. So there's a lot of upfront things you need to consider from a home charging standpoint too.
So do you think it would be better for people who do live in, townhomes or condos or big complexes where they may not be able to put in all that infrastructure, then maybe they should get a hybrid or a plug-in? That would be better for that lifestyle based on where they live.
I think that home chargers, for folks who have some of the concerns that you mentioned, have been historically an issue because it costs some money up front, and some people may not be able to afford it, especially folks in equity eligible communities. So I think that providing incentives to offset some of those costs, even if the garage is detached, right, to make sure that people can have at-home charging is going to be absolutely crucial, because I agree that at-home charging is going to be key. And this should include also folks who rent, for example, in a multi-unit dwelling. We right now are offering rebates to the property owners so that they have the incentive to install chargers for people who don't necessarily own.
So if somebody is renting, they should go to the property owner or whoever and talk to them about getting this infrastructure put in.
Yeah, so first off, I'm a renter, and I'm totally getting your information to give to my landlord, because I would really like a home charger. But second, yeah, I mean, I think you definitely need to consider your lifestyle and what fits into it. So, I'm married. I don't have kids. We're a two-car household. Well, I will say a one-car household, but I get test cars, so essentially a two-car household. Sure. And my husband drives between 100 and 200 miles every day. Wow. For him, like that, an electric car is probably not the thing, because he's going to northern suburbs, Wisconsin, into Indiana. He's driving all over the place. But for me, I mean, when I'm not traveling, I'd go 2.5 miles to the gym and then I come home. I go a mile to the grocery store and come home. My trips are very short. So, or if I'm going out to the suburbs, it's like 25 miles and then home. And so for me, like an electric car would make a lot of sense. But I'm a renter. I don't have a place to plug in. And so, I would have to depend on the public infrastructure or plug into my wall jack, which is 110 volts, which, by the way, if you deplete your battery, I will tell you from personal experience, it takes 3 days to charge.
3 days?
on a wall jack. So you want the level 2 home charger that will give you, charge you up overnight, or a plug-in hybrid. I have long thought that plug-in hybrids are a great bridge vehicle because of, perfect for the city, going to run my errands, going to the gym, visiting a friend in the suburbs, whatever. I'm all in on electric. But then if I need to drive down to Indianapolis, I can, the gasoline engine, the electric part will get me out of the city through traffic. But then once I hit I-65 and head south, I'm all in the gasoline engine. I don't need to stop and charge. And, I get there, I can plug into my parents' house and then start all over again.
Straight shot, yeah.
I think that considering your lifestyle and how you want to function is going to be very important as we transition to an electrified future.
I want to talk a little bit about the advancement of EVs. How many years have they been out? Are we seeing improvements in range? It doesn't seem like we really are, not that much. Are we seeing improvements in the battery life? The batteries are, there has to be some kind of, I'm not hearing a lot about that is the point that I'm making. So what are your thoughts on that?
In the beginning, battery life, or battery range was pretty short. In 2011, Cars.com purchased a Nissan Leaf. It had 73 miles of range. Now the Nissan Leaf is up to 150 miles, but that's now on the low end of range,
Right,
because you can
right.
buy models like the Lucid Air or Tesla Model S. They are rated at more than 400 miles of range on a charge. There are lots of models in the 300-mile range, like Kia EV6, Tesla Model Y. So range has increased a lot in that time because batteries have gotten bigger, so they're a lot larger than they used to be. It makes these vehicles heavy, but it gives them that bigger range or longer range.
How long do these batteries last?
I think that can partly depend on a lot of factors like use, both like how frequently DC fast charging is used, because that can stress a battery more than charging at home on level 2 power.
And that's one of these education things that people need to know.
Yeah, and also charging to 100% versus staying in kind of the battery's sweet spot of 20 to 80% can extend its life. Also, where the vehicle's been used, like extreme heat parts of the country can kind of stress a battery more. But even saying that, there's firms out there like Recurrent that measures and estimates battery's life, and even on those older EVs like the Nissan Leaf, a lot of them are still out there and in use. There hasn't been like this problem with batteries failing at like this high rate, even for older models. They may not have as high a maximum range as they once did, sort of like a cell phone battery that
I was gonna
loses
say,
capability over time.
Right, after your phone is a couple of years old, it's like, my battery won't charge.
Yeah,
I
but
can't
they're still
charge.
drivable, even those older ones.
Yeah, and I would agree. The idea is that. Like, did I somehow turn this off? I don't know. It should be red. All right. No, all right. So.
I know.
But I agree. And like 2012 was a much different time than 2024, because in 2012 the batteries weren't as good, the range wasn't as good, but you've had all of this time to perfect the technology and to really maximize what we've got. And I feel like I was at a presentation with an automaker recently where they said after 10 years, they were registering like only a 1 or 2% decrease in battery life. So, once upon a time, like you'd start with 100 miles of range, and then after 10 years, you'd end up with like 80 miles of range.
Right.
A huge loss. Now, the range losses are much less over a 10-year period.
How does that affect the electric bill? That would be ComEd.
Yeah. Also glad you asked that, because every time you plug something else into your home, it's going to increase electricity usage,
Of
right?
course.
But what I encourage you to look at is what's the total impact to your wallet. And when you look at the fuel cost savings, the maintenance cost savings, that's not even counting the health and environmental benefits of electric vehicles. If you look at, for example, our EV toolkit will show you specific numbers. The average customer will save hundreds to thousands of dollars on a yearly basis when you look at it holistically.
So you're talking about comparing gasoline fuel to electric fuel.
Correct.
So I recently bought a hybrid because I didn't want to just like jump in, and I'm noticing the gas mileage. I'm going to the gas station every other week instead of every week, which is fabulous. Of course, it takes premium gas, so I don't know if I'm really saving that much, but it's still, I'm going in the right direction. So this is something I think, again, as part of the education, people need to understand. They're going to see a higher electric bill, but they're not going to see the gasoline bill, the fuel in that way.
Plus, there are no oil changes.
That's
So
right,
you don't
that's
have to go
right.
in every 3 months or so to get your oil changed. And I would say the other really big benefit of owning an EV is the idea of not having to go to a gas station, especially if you have an at-home charger, because you're charging up overnight, you're fueling up overnight. And so, I'm one of those people, I hate wasting time. And so, like, I'm on an airplane, I'm going to go to the bathroom right before they turn the seatbelt sign off because I don't have to go once I land. I don't want to waste the time. And so something like that, is a huge time saver. Like, you're not going to be spending 10 minutes or 15 minutes, I mean, unless you're taking a road trip, you're saving a lot of time just by fueling up at home. And I think that is, a huge benefit, not having to stop at a gas station.
How do you take care of an electric vehicle? I mean, we know what we have to do with gas engines, and we have to, well, we don't change the oil, but there's other things that we have to do. So what do we do?
Well, yeah, there's the fewer maintenance costs, like Joe was saying, no change of the oil. But I think the thing is really making sure you kind of keep the battery in its optimal range a lot. But in terms of like living with it and using it, I mean, these EVs are very similar to gas-powered cars. Like, you can take them through car washes. You don't have to worry about water on them or anything like that. Some things that we're starting to see, though, is that some EVs have higher tire wear because these are very heavy vehicles compared to conventional
so the
gas-powered
batteries weigh more.
vehicles, and they also have, some of them, very high levels of torque and power, so it's adding more stress to the tires on these vehicles and wearing them out sooner. So that could be something that could have a higher maintenance rate than a traditional gas-powered car.
Yeah, when the Ford F-150 Lightning first came out, I did a comparison between the F-150 and then the F-150 Lightning, and the time between your maintenance checks is a lot longer for an electric vehicle, and I feel like there was, like, at your 100-mile check or something, you have to like change the battery coolant. So, there's little things like that that are going to be unique to an electric vehicle, but no oil changes. You don't have to worry about your fuel pump gumming up. There are other things that you don't have to worry about. But I do have to say, and this is a little bit of a tangent, but just something I noticed while driving an electric vehicle in cold weather, because you don't have an engine, when it's cold and it's snowing, like, the snow on your hood doesn't melt. I'm like, I completely random. So, I mean, you need to think about that kind of stuff as well, owning an EV, maybe having a soft scrub brush to get the snow off of your hood, because when it's cold and it ices over, it doesn't melt.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Were you going to add something to that? You look like you had something to say. Okay. I mean, there's a lot of hidden things that, unless, like, you test drive them, you don't really think of. Is there anything else people should be looking out for that they may not initially think of with an EV?
I encourage everyone to really inform themselves on the incentives that are available, because many people are not aware of really how much our government is offering at the federal and state level, in addition to the rebates that your utility, ComEd, is offering, which are stackable. So when you are scared of the upfront cost of the charging of the electric vehicle, really right now is the time to buy, because there's so many incentives, and it's really the place to do it.
Who do we ask? How do we find out about these incentives?
They are in many places, but at ComEd we have them in our EV toolkit. So if you go to comed.com/clean, the EV toolkit has a section specifically dedicated to the incentives where you can find out more.
And these would be federal and local and dealer and all
Correct.
of them. You'd have links to all of that. That's good to know. And of course the ComEd ones too. When did those start? You said those are coming up soon?
Our rebates started this month. The
Okay.
residential ones for level 2 chargers started on February 1st. Business and public sector for EVs, as well as charging infrastructure, went live today.
That's awesome.
Well, and also in terms of incentives, I would say to make sure that you, when you're buying a vehicle, incentives used to not be available for leasing, but I think that there are some incentives for leasing now. They've also changed the laws starting in 2024 in terms of whether it's a tax credit or you can use the money as a down payment. So I would say, like, do your research on incentives, like, before you buy the car, but absolutely do your research when you are installing home charging, because you might have to do some electrical work to amp up your garage. But if you can offset that with an incentive, and I mean, I feel like there are tax benefits, resale benefits, like when you're reselling your house if you have a level 2 charger installed.
Yes,
So,
definitely.
I mean,
Yes.
there's so many benefits beyond just the initial outlay. And it's like playing a game of chess. You have to think, 3 moves ahead instead of just looking at what is right now.
When you talk about resale, I'm curious about resale of EVs. How is that an effective way to get a used EV and save some money? Does it come with a used battery, or how does that work?
Yeah, I feel like the used EV prices have fluctuated a lot just because new EV prices are also changing a lot. Tesla has changed, they changed their prices a lot in the last year, and that can have immediate impacts on used Teslas for sale. So we're seeing at Cars.com more interest in used EVs, and the prices can be significantly lower than buying new. I think the average price on our site was around $38,000 versus $63,000 for a new EV. So you do have to kind of consider that battery age, but we have information on the site that has kind of projected battery health based on metrics for those vehicles and that are listed as used vehicles.
And if I may add, I think that the used EV market is absolutely crucial for us to make sure that the transition to electric is there for folks who may not be able to afford a new vehicle. And we, for example, at ComEd, our business and public sector rebates have rebates for EVs, and we offer rebates for used vehicles as well, realizing that we're going to have to do that to make this transition equitable for everyone.
One other thing I would say is that, one other thing I would say is with the used EV is that look at the warranties, because a lot of the warranties will transfer from owner to owner. And so, like, if the battery warranty is for 10 years, then, you know, if it's 3 years old, you still have 7 years on that warranty. And a lot of people are very concerned because, you know, to replace a new battery could be $25,000. That's like more than a new car. But if it's something that breaks under warranty, like, you don't have to pay for it. So just, I mean, if you're buying used, I would also say do your research on the warranties and make sure that, you know, you're comfortable with the coverage.
Did you want to add something to that? Okay, I've got one last question before we wrap up. So what trends are we seeing in EVs right now?
I think one we're starting to see more of is EV batteries being used as mobile power sources and mobile backup for homes. Initially, that wasn't really an option with EVs. The battery was used to power the vehicle, but now brands like Ford and Hyundai are offering features to use that power to power other things, whether with Ford, like power tools at a job site on the F-150 Lightning, or Hyundai kind of with the Ioniq 5 using it to power a tailgate, or some things you might bring for that. But the really cool one is if you have it set up properly, using like an F-150 Lightning to power your home in a backup with the right kind of transfer switch set up for your home electrical service. I mean, that's a very cool use of the technology in my view.
I agree. I saw that with the F-110 Lightning when they brought that out, and I'm like, wow, that's impressive.
I'll tell you a trend that I want to see, and that our rebates are going to make sure it happens. And it's making sure that the transition to electric vehicles happens for our entire customer base, not just a subset. So our rebates are actually higher for equity eligible customers. And we have funding reserved for equity eligible customers to make sure that they can also be part of this transition.
That is really good to know. So I guess the moral of the story is do your research. You really have to study what you want, what is right for your lifestyle, and ask questions. There are no stupid questions, and there's a lot of questions that people have about EVs, and you guys have answered quite a few. Thank you so much for enlightening us on electric vehicles, and we will be back tomorrow with another topic, noon, right here at the Chicago Auto Show. Enjoy the rest of your day, everybody. Thanks a lot, guys.